Welcome to episode 14 of Ralph Stuff. Tonight's segments are My Barns 2007. Unlike me, my barns are getting old and decrepit. A trip along I-240 through downtown Asheville, that's always an adventure. In a film about the Appalachian Mountains that was filmed in 1947 and has since been released into the public domain. And welcome back to Ralph Stuff. Always glad to have you visit. The most interesting segment of tonight's show, I think, is a 12-minute film, which is a life segment that was filmed in 1947 about the culture here in the Appalachians. I think for people who have just moved into the area, it might help you get some idea of what we're all about. I hope you enjoy that. So on with the show. I hope you find it, as always, entertaining and even sometimes illuminating. Thanks a lot. The buildings out here on the farm, unlike me, are getting old and decrepit. We call this the pack house. That's where we used to process our tobacco crops when I was a kid. The red part of the building was built in the early 50s. However, the stone found, and I remember quite well when it was built, I was 5, 6, 7 years old. The foundation, though, dates from the 19th century, the old rock. This is an equipment shed also built in the 1950s onto the pack house. And that's the back of it. The basement of it, which is much like a dungeon, we used to put tobacco in case. In case simply means doing much like you put a cigar in a humidor to get a little moisture in it and make it more pliable and easier to work with. And then once the tobacco was in case, we would hand it up through a trap door in the floor and strip the leaves off and grate them and get them ready for market. These are tobacco sticks that we used to hang the tobacco on to dry it. Would come out of the field and we'd put on the sticks in the field and bring it in and hang it in the barns to dry. It's one of my old amateur radio antennas getting buried there. This is a silage grinder. It was a very important adjunct that we used back in the 50s to process the corn crop to save it as a tobacco setter, by the way, the barrel there. And that's the pipe where the silage will go out into the silo, and we'll see the silo a little bit later in this segment. We'd throw bundles of corn in the moving conveyor belt there, and they'd get chopped up very finely and blown up into the silo. So looking at the back of the equipment shed, a couple old tanks that we were going to make into watering troughs for the cattle, but never did. This is the main barn. It's probably built in the 19-teens or 20s. Been around a long time. Still a nice barn. This is the upper barn hall. Has some steps in the back to go up into the hay loft. And since it's gotten a little messed up since we were feeding cows for a long time out of it, and hay bales would break. And there are, of course, snakes in barns, just like in almost any barn. It's one where the skin's left its skin. And I'm inside the hall now, looking down into one of the stalls. And of course, stalls are to keep horses or cows in during the winter if you need to. This is the main barn hall, where all the stalls, the doors to the stalls are. And there's a big hole in the floor so you can throw down hay bales or put hay bales up if you're stocking it in the summer after cutting hay. And there were also what we called tier poles, poles that we hung tobacco on to dry during the fall so it could be processed. Outside the barn now, this is the lower barn hall. 3 halls in total. And I'm opening the door. There we go. Spider web. This one had actually been fixed up to feed the cows that would stick their head in through the side of the barn there and eat hay or corn or whatever we wanted to feed them. The cows loved the many good meals they had out of there. Close the door. That's looking down towards the old dairy barn and the silo. That's remnants of the electric fence we used to keep the cows in, and looking at the lower shed that's attached to the barn. And in just a moment we'll go down and look at these other buildings here on the farm in beautiful downtown Alexander. This was the new milking parlor. And I say new, it was built probably 52, 53. That's a view of the barn from the south side looking back towards the shed and the lower barn hall. We had a dairy farm up until probably the mid-50s when my dad figured out that it's a little bit derelict inside, as you see, a lot of junk. Building's not really worth fixing up, so we're just letting it gracefully age away. That was the old milking parlor where when I was a very little kid and we milked by hand. We stored the milk in a big milk cooler that was excellent for keeping watermelons cold in the summer. As I started to say, though, as we look at the silo, my dad figured out in the mid-50s that dairying wasn't a paying proposition. We raised beef cattle and tobacco after that. There are vines growing out of the silo. Unfortunately, this is in the winter, so you really can't see how many there are. But as we look at the entrance to the old dairy barn where the cows would come in while we were getting ready to milk them. But I call this my patented self-filling silo because it's slowly filling up with vegetation and no need to cut corn and blow it into the top as we used to. I've climbed that a lot. We used to have small wooden doors that we'd take down each door as the level of the silage would go down. We'd shovel it out into sacks and take it and put it in the cow's feed trough, and they really like silage. It ferments, so they love that fermented corn, as do many humans. This is looking inside. Of course, this is in much worse shape than when we were using it as part of the dairy. It was a very nice building. Probably this one also was built in the teens or 20s. Used to be nicely whitewashed when I was a kid, and a whole lot, as I said, a whole lot cleaner. You can look up at the rafters and see some of the whitewash left inside. And again, we're looking back up toward the main barn, and up beyond that's my house and the more modern buildings that we use here for our current businesses. That's the new milking parlor, which is, of course, quite old now. And you see the packing house and the shed. A little closer view. There's a reflection of me in the window. I did that on purpose. You can see me waving at you as I was filming using my high-definition camera. So I got really good film of all this grown-up mess. This is looking back up towards the main road. We had a stove in the pack house during the winter when it was very cold, as it always was when we were getting tobacco ready for market. Would be warm. And looking back down again towards the main barn. And this is from the road, Macedonia Road that goes by the farm, looking at the buildings from a distance. This looks like it's way out in the country, but we're actually only about 5 miles from downtown Asheville. Not very far. Was the silo again, and the buildings. And of course, that's my house on the right, and one of my office buildings on the left. In fact, the building where this film is being edited right now, the warehouse for my business. And of course, the paved driveways I call my intra-estate highway system. I-1 and I-2. There are two of them. And panning back down towards the barn again, and back to the pack house. And again, that foundation for the pack house is the oldest structure on the farm here, and probably 19th century for sure. And the back of the of my office building, looking down towards the barn, and zooming in towards the barn loft, and another view of the house. The house built in 1915, but I added the wing on the right to it when I got married in 1994. Originally an old Victorian farmhouse. It's been remodeled. This is my four-wheel drive with my Bronze Star license tag on it. I earned the right to show that tag. And that's it. Thanks. About 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon on I-240 going east through downtown Asheville. As you can see, there's still a considerable amount of traffic. Nothing, however, like drive time during the week as people attempt to get home, or worse on Friday evenings. Traffic's bumper to bumper, and often it's I-40 is just no more than a parking lot if there's been an accident on the bridge, for example, on the Smoky Mountain Bridge. We desperately need, due to population growth, at least 4 lanes on each side. We need road.
Was waiting when man came into the highlands. First the Cherokee Indian, then the Spaniard hunting treasure, then the Scotch-Irish, German, and Huguenot settlers in search of home sites. They came nearly 200 years ago, cleared the wilderness to build log cabins, fought the forest for cropland, then settled down, walled in from the rest of the world. This is the story of their descendants. People who still live by simple, honest values in a world grown complicated all around them. The man who never strays from the highway will never learn the story or know the soul of the highlands. It lies farther back, in homes hidden deep in the hollow, and in the classroom of a mountain school.
At 3:30 on a school day afternoon, the mountains call to the children of the Southern Highlands. The quiet old hills are jealous of schools and school teachers. I know, because I grew up in these mountains. I teach with textbook and blackboard, but the mountain uses magic and charm. In my sight, these children are the hope of a better future for the South. The mountain wants them to listen to the music of tumbling rivers and get their feet tangled in a laurel slick. But because they are mountain children, they'll listen to me and to the mountain too, and keep the best of each. A hill child starts life with just about what his father and grandfather had. Pure air, pure water, and a far view from the front porch of his father's house. These things he doesn't have to work for. But everything else, he pays for in toil. He starts early. Courage, pride, and love of freedom are strong in his blood. Those same qualities led his forefathers into the mountain wilderness nearly 2 centuries ago. They battled the forest of their cornfields and took steady aim down the long barrel of a rifle when they needed meat for the table. They came from Scotland and Ireland mostly. Clannish people with dry humor and gunpowder tempers. Sentimental, too. Lovers of song and respecters of God. That's why their hearts melted when they saw the green giants of the Highlands. They were humbled the way we are today. Ben Blair put it in words last Sunday when I saw him just before church.
Well, I'll tell you, I think a man back here in these mountains enjoys himself just about as much as any people there is on earth living. There's nothing to bother him much, and he can serve the Lord. All this land of ours don't belong to us. It belongs to our Maker. And he has got control of it all. And if he gives us the rain and the sunshine and the seed, well, we have good crops. And I think that's the greatest thing in life that could be handed down to us, is just to live for the Lord while we're here and try to get to a better world over yonder.
Hill people started with what they found. They cut logs to build cabins and split shingles to cover the roofs. Then they settled down, locked in the mountains for a century and a half. It's no wonder today's children are close to the old ways. Sometimes very close. In all his days, John McDowell has never had a spoonful of white sugar on his table. His daddy left him a sorghum press, and he makes his own sweetening. John himself feeds the sorghum cane into the press, and his old mare has been circling round John as long as I can remember. I had to smile when he told me the press was botched on from an iron foundry way yonder in Ohio, and about 20 days a coming, as it rode the last spell on the back of a mule critter. John's wife, Lucy, strains the squeezings through a patch of burlap. She makes the best cornbread for miles around, and her man makes the best sweetening. The steam rises up like mist off a mountain and sweetens the air in the clearing. John's brother, Herman, stirs the sweet juice while it boils in the pan and gets thicker by the stir. Makes me almighty hungry when I'm near it. If a man wanted a chair to sit on, he made it himself. and his womenfolk wove the seats from corn shucks. The hill woman made all the family's clothes. Time was when store-bought things flooded the mountains and folks were ashamed to own homemade things. Then the tourists came into the highlands and carried on about the old-timey quilts and the home-forged ironwork. So the loom and the forge came back to life. I like to see the shuttle and the bellows in the hands of a mountain girl or boy, because I know there's a naturalness in it. And it's something they'll always remember. The way they'll remember the easy-come rhythm of an old-fashioned mountain square dance.
Big ring, circle there. And round and back. Swing your opposite leg. That one. Hot couple, dance out, go hands across. Ladies bow, gents go high. Opposite swing. Now your partner. Hot couple, dance on, go hands across. Ladies bow, gents you know how. Opposite swing. Now your partner. Once and a half promenade. Lady couple, turn back with open tongue. Promenade your partner home.
A new kind of music has come to the Southern Highlands, the hum of electric generators, echoing back into the farthest valley. Men harnessed the rivers and strung wires across the peaks and valleys, bringing cheap power to a land of kerosene lamps and long back muscles. Power for new industries, new jobs for people of the hills. The music came too late for the old and weary, but it's a tonic for young people just starting out. Sue White told me last week she means to buy an electric stove for her new kitchen. Sue is kindly persistent when she sets her heart on something. Her daughter is too. I know. She's one of my pupils. New ideas in farming came along with the power lines and light bulbs. A mountain farmer years ago planted according to spells of the moon. When his land wore out, he cleared some more. He knew there was something wrong, but that was the way his father did it. All that is changing. Now he can talk things over with the county farm agent and the federal government's farm advisor. He learns how to grow tobacco, how to start the young plants in a sunny patch, and harvest the crop in the early fall. Tobacco puts cash in his pocket for necessities that he can't grow or build. He hears about plowing a furrow along the contours of his sloping land so the rain won't wash away the good topsoil. And he lets machines do more and more of his work. That way he gets more done and doesn't feel so tired when the sun goes down. He learns the sense of rotating crops, growing cover crops to be plowed under, so the soil he farms today will be rich and sweet for his sons. It used to be that a tree was cut down if it was in the way. Now the Highland farmer protects his woodlot and thinks of his lumber as a crop. It's a new idea with him. He takes care of the forest, and the forest takes care of him. These proud old mountains have a way of strutting over us and bossing us around. But we're beginning to talk back now. Every chance I get, I go and visit with kinfolk of youngsters I have in school. Because old and young, I try to make them understand that we've all got to go along together if we're going to get anywhere at all. Our people love this land. They mean to stay here until the mountains tumble into the valleys. But they need no longer be slaves to the mountains if they listen to the music of the future, the hum of dynamos and the song of machines. A poet once said that something in a hill child dies when he goes down to level land. We all know that the highlands are a little bit poorer for every child who goes away from them. My dream is to make life worth the struggle in the highlands. That's why I feel easy in my mind when night comes on the mountains and I hear my neighbor singing the old ballads to his grandchildren.
In a summer morning, first they'll appear and then are gone. Do you remember yon green mountain where you and I first fell in love? The little birds would sing so sweetly, and winter's little...
I know a good man is helping me make my dream come true, helping me hold the hearts of these young Americans closer and closer to home.
Go to ralphwroberts.com to see this show again.